Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's There's a Will. We have a couple of interesting subjects for you I think you're going to enjoy. The first subject we're going to talk about is a series of articles which curiously are calling Warsaw the Paris of the East again. So we're going to look into why Warsaw would ever have been called the Paris of the East and what it means for Warsaw to be called that today and if it's true or not. And with me in studio is Nicholas, no relation, Richardson. It's good to see you, Nick.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
What a pleasure, I could say.
It is.
That's what Bruce Willis said to me.
It is, and I appreciate it. It is a great pleasure for you to have a guest who's articulate,
it's a great pleasure.
Well-dressed.
But that's what Bruce Willis said to me, and then he ignored me
yeah,
for
well,
the,
of course,
for the
poor
rest
Bruce
of the
Willis
time.
will be ignoring a lot of people now with his recently diagnosed
He's a big star. I think he was already starting to fade at that point.
He was, yeah.
But nobody knew. This was some years ago, a few years ago. Yeah. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. Poor fella. At any rate, he did say that to me. What a pleasure.
What a pleasure.
I was sitting next to him at lunch, and I can tell you he had a small snifter of vodka, but a little snifflet.
A snifflet.
Of vodka. He didn't have there was no tequila sunrise like you like. That's your favorite drink, the tequila sunrise.
I'm not even sure I know what a tequila
You're always like,
sunrise is.
Oh, when we're out, tequila sunrise. I'm like, what? Yeah, I don't know why.
No, not at all.
Or a Buck's Fizz, if you're feeling hoity-toity. Anyway, never mind. I like a Pimm's number whatever.
5.
Yeah, that's the one. Cup.
Or is it number 1?
I don't know.
They only make one. There are lots of numbers. They only make one these days. I think number 5 is Chanel number 5, isn't it?
I think it's Chanel.
I think it's Pimm's number 1.
I think it's Pimm's number 1. I can't remember. I don't really drink.
Like Heinz 57 varieties. They only make ketchup and baked beans.
I like Pimm's.
Yeah, Pimm's is nice in the summer.
Yeah, it's great in the summer. In the winter.
You seldom find it outside England, actually.
You don't want to sit in the garden in the winter with the Pimm's.
It depends where your garden is located.
Unless
your garden's in the Caribbean or somewhere.
There you go.
Somewhere exotic.
That'd be or Florida, or somewhere warm in the southern states of America, or India.
India.
Pretending you're with the Raj.
On the veranda.
On the veranda.
Yes.
Well, you can go to Goa and pretend you're Portuguese.
Yeah, I think I'd rather...
Colonial.
I'd rather be British.
I would too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather be British or American. I'd rather be American.
Yes,
but I like British too. I could be
course.
British. I could be Polish. I like all three countries a lot.
Yes. That's where you spend all your time, so it's hardly surprising.
It's true. Yeah, I've spent my life in those 3 countries, as well as Nicaragua. But that was an aberration, sir.
It reminds me actually of that probably apocryphal story of Viscount Palmerston. Viscount Palmerston, our greatest foreign secretary, of course, in the mid-19th century.
Who?
Viscount Palmerston.
Oh, Palmerston. Yeah.
Meeting the French foreign minister. Yeah. And the French foreign minister said, well, had I not been born French, I would have wanted to have been born English. And Palmerston said, how extraordinary. If I'd not been born English, I would certainly have wanted to have been. Obviously expecting Palmerston to say French.
It's unthinkable.
Exactly.
What?
Those are the days when we had politicians who knew what they were doing and were proud of their country and made sure their country was top of the pile.
And I think one of the biggest problems right now is that people are not proud of their countries.
And they should be proud of their country.
Trace everything back to that and proud of their cultures, and they should be.
They should
Certainly
be very
Poland
proud of
should
their
be, particularly its last 30 years and the previous to the Soviet stuff.
We should be particularly proud of our cultures, the United States and the United Kingdom.
Yes, absolutely.
Because as a result of the hard work of our forebears, we are sitting here in the capital city of another country speaking our language. And being allowed to do so.
And they want us to.
And they want us to. And that's
they came to me and said, do a program.
Yeah.
Would you like to do a program? I said, yeah, but I want to do the kind of program I want to do. And they said, fine, just do a program.
But we should be very happy and proud and grateful that our ancestors so organized the world that this is the case. And I wonder whether our children or grandchildren will be fortunate in living in...
Would they rather speak Chinese? I wonder about those people sometimes.
Well, you'd think the way they go on when they take to the streets...
Or Russian?
Complaining about everything, that that our countries are particularly awful places to live. Why don't they go and try having the same protests in the countries they support?
Which brings me to Warsaw as the Paris of the East.
Paris of the East, yes.
Yeah. Another country people are wanting to come to. I was at a school yesterday that it's a private school. I believe, or maybe it's a school of the province, I'm not sure, but a small one. So mostly very specific subjects like journalism and some English language, Polish language, some things like that. And the rector of the school was telling me, just meeting him socially, was telling me that most of the students are coming from Africa, from Rwanda and Nigeria and Zambia. He said those are the most. And the other ones are coming from the Indian subcontinent. So why do these people want to come here if it's so horrible? And I've been reading in the press. Now I read this in the Telegraph, which has always been pretty favorable to Poland, no matter the government. Telegraph has always seen Poland as a pretty decent place, and an ally, particularly during the war now. An ally, I mean, the British and the Polish are staunch allies of the Ukrainians. But a series of articles in the Telegraph, MSN, the BBC, Warsaw is now reassuming its title of the Paris of the East, which it used to be called. Now, I never understood that any more than something as the Venice of the North, Amsterdam's the Venice of the North. No, Amsterdam's just a great city in Holland.
Well, exactly.
And Warsaw's a great city.
I agree.
Has become, again, a great city and a beautiful city, unbelievably so. It was so ugly for so long.
It was.
And now it's become beautiful again, right? So much rebuilt and so much care put into it by every government that's been in there.
Well, that's
and particularly
a great thing, yes.
Funding from the EU as well. It's been an amazing cooperation. The EU should be funding because it was, the main country in the EU these days was the one that destroyed most of Poland and subjugated and murdered its people and the Jewish people too. I'm talking about Germany, of course. So it's quite right. They're not doing Poland a favor. Poland's doing them a favor by being a partner with them, I think. No, that's not a way to look at it. They both have to learn to cooperate. This is it. And I don't want to say that particularly, but sometimes there's this push that something's wrong with Poland. There's nothing wrong. Poland has made miraculous strides. The economy is good.
Yes, I think what is wrong with Poland in the eyes of people who say there's things wrong with countries is that the Polish government, the current Polish government, and indeed previous governments have been very keen, I think, to maintain the things which make Warsaw pleasant to live in, not least of which is your ability to walk around at any time of night or day, generally unmolested, and this applies to women as well. And this is something which large cities, not capital cities, not just capital, but large cities in Western Europe are no longer able to provide for their citizens.
Well, let's hope it continues.
Well, let's hope it continues, and it continues for a very good reason, which is largely, and this will not be a popular view, but it is in fact the truth, that largely Poland is made up of predominantly Poles who have a common culture.
I don't care if that's popular or not, it's true.
But it's true. Yeah. And you only have to go to other countries, and you look at some surprising countries have problems, like Sweden.
Yeah.
Who would have thought Sweden would have all the problems it has, or Norway as well? We don't hear much about the ones in Norway. And this is all because of
What a good point.
And this is all because of uncontrolled immigration of people who actually have no interest in contributing. I mean, some do, but very few do. And these are the facts. And they may think, oh, you can't say that it's racist, it's this. But it is the truth. Yeah. It would be like me going to the doctor and the doctor saying, oh, doctor thinking to himself, well, look, he's got cancer, but I don't want to tell him it's unpleasant. I'll tell him he's got a headache and take an aspirin. And this is what our politicians are doing.
They keep the truth from
him. They are sacrificing the long-term well-being of the countries whose populations they represent for the short-term personal
There's a lot
gain.
of nannying by all political stripes.
Yeah.
this is the problem.
Telling other people how to behave.
Big government.
Yeah.
Too big a government.
It's far too big. And it's made up largely of
Not
people.
Not just here, generally.
When we were younger, governments tended to be made up of people who actually were genuinely motivated by public service. Many of them had very good careers elsewhere and didn't do it, but they did it out of a sense of duty.
Yeah.
And I keep going back to it because this is the best example. Mrs. Thatcher's first cabinet in 1979. Now, governments are made up of people who are otherwise unemployable and who rely on the salary of being an elected representative. And therefore, they are desperately keen to keep their jobs, not to represent the people, but to keep their jobs. There is a difference. And this is why we're suffering now, both in the quality, largely, of the debate and the public debate, and then within government in the quality of the decision-making, which is very poor. Sorry, don't let me go off.
It'd be nice to see a two-shot with both of us, wouldn't it? It'd be nice to see both of us.
No,
in
but
the shot.
they focus on the most important person, obviously, in the room.
Well, you're talking the most.
But anyway, don't let
I'm
me...
going to talk now because I want to... there we go.
It's your
You're
show.
going to see both of us, you see.
It's your
show. It's a nice shot. Look at the skyline, because this is what I wanted to see, because there's the skyline of Warsaw. You see the beautiful skyline, and when you get the wider shot. And that's a picture of Warsaw.
So I feel I rather hijacked your point about Paris being the...
No, I think what you're saying is...
Paris being the Warsaw of the West.
What I wanted to... what I'm saying is either Poland and Warsaw as the flagship city of... and Krakow, the most touristed city, or traveled to city, most famous city, perhaps. Or maybe they're equally famous. I don't know what the Poles would say. The Pole, P-O-L-L, would say. But I think it's important to realize that either Poland is a great place, or it's a place which has been overtaken by an egregious totalitarian, tendency over the last 10 years or whatever it is that people complain about. And I haven't seen any appreciable difference in quality of life, although inflation, but it's everywhere.
Inflation is everywhere.
What are you going to do? It's everywhere. And healthcare costs are everywhere bad. And I don't want to get into specific policies right now because that's not going to help. That's not that discussion. I'd be willing to have it at another time. But generally, if you look at Poland, it's improving every year by leaps and bounds, so much so that they're saying that Poland could be richer than Britain by 2030. Now, I don't know if this is just a fatuous statement, or whether it's something that holds water.
Yes, but he didn't say that. You'd be saying Poland would be richer than France and a number of other countries as well. I think
it's on the rise.
Yeah, I think that particular statistic assumes that everything stays exactly as it is with the same rates of growth or lack of growth in the United Kingdom or whatever. We don't know.
Well, we know it's one of the biggest tech places for developing tech and distribution centers. Why is it a distribution center? Some years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I wrote a story about Warsaw. It was in Playboy magazine. And I wrote a story about Warsaw being like Atlanta, because I lived part of my life in Atlanta. I went to university there and some high school there. And Warsaw was going to end up like Atlanta. Why? Because Atlanta only grew big because it was a logistics point. It was a train crossing, rather like Warsaw is between the East and the West, between Moscow and Berlin, and all points, from there. Also for freight traffic by air, for truck, train, and air traffic. And that's what made Atlanta into the huge logistics center, which then attracted tech and all those other things. We're seeing the same model play out, and I wrote about it 20 years ago. Now, I'm not saying that just to say that, boy, I'm a great observer, but it is my job as a journalist to observe things.
Of course.
And to sell articles based on an idea that might capture the imagination. Otherwise, I don't get paid. It's not like on Facebook. I just write any damn thing, I think, and people will read it, Or Twitter, the abomination.
All these social media sites have become, as you
Now, this
say,
was a 2,000-word story, well thought out. It's a little more difficult than your knee-jerk feelings in a moment. But anyway, and we've seen that pretty much come true. The tallest building in Europe, where is it now?
Here, in Warsaw.
Apart, if you rule out Moscow.
If you rule out Moscow and you rule out London, it's here.
Well, no, it's taller, marginally taller. The Warsaw Tower is marginally taller than the Shard.
Really?
Yep.
It doesn't look very tall when you look at it, though, does it?
Yeah, because a lot of it is
that
this spire,
that spike on the top,
huge spire,
which is a bit cheating because
that
that constitutes a third of the height of the building.
I think it's a big cheat.
But are you sure it's actually taller than the spire?
Yeah, and I'm reading it right here too. I knew that had been said. Norman Foster's Warsaw Tower. He also built the Shard, and it is taller. But
the
whether
thing
it's
about
taller or not, I don't want.
But the thing about the Shard is
it's as tall or close to.
The rooms go all the way to the top.
Yeah, I know.
Whereas
I get that.
whereas the Varso Tower. The
Yeah,
top,
I was disappointed.
The top third,
Yeah.
I was disappointed because when you
Yeah.
stand looking at it, the perspective, it doesn't seem that tall.
You know, I was disappointed by that. Mm. So anyway, and then the writer goes on to mention that part of his family was from near Warsaw, Pultusk, you know.
Pultusk, yes.
Lovely little town on the
Pultusk
on
has,
the
doesn't
Narrow.
Pultusk have the largest market square in Poland?
One of the largest in Europe, yeah. But it's not like Krakow, which is a square.
It's an oblong.
It's an oblong.
Well, we have to
market.
say rectangle these days.
It's
When I was
oblong
younger,
market.
we said oblong. And
a
I think
rectangle.
Pultusk is somewhere where
Yeah.
Napoleon stopped off on his journey east at one point.
Yes, there is a plaque there. There are a lot of plaques in Poland about where Napoleon
Changed
stayed.
horses here.
Yeah, I see these on my travels, and Kasia, who's filming with me, has seen this at least once when we were out filming along the Odra River. She's in the studio today, replacing either Raphael or Anna Maria, who are both out of town. So she's seen that too. Yeah, Pultusk is great market, long market square with an interesting chateau and a beautiful Nerev River at the one end of the square.
Exactly.
And a plaque to Napoleon
Napoleon.
staying in some hotel there, or a house there. It's not a hotel, a house. It's not even a B&B. I don't know what is going on there. I think there was a shop in the bottom of it. Anyway, this writer goes on to say he had some relatives from this part of the world. And gosh, it's not a surprise. A lot of people have relatives from this part of the world, don't they?
They do.
Who are living in America or Britain or many other countries. So it's not unusual. Anyway, you have this great long history of Warsaw. We discovered in filming a travel excerpt that the first semi-permanent encampment, which became a settlement, was a Viking one from the late 800s, early 900s in Warsaw. Because the Vikings were up and down the rivers, of course. Fascinating. You can go over there and you can see there's a hole, but you can still see the earth wall around it, you know? And it was built, as they often built defensive places to settle. There's a swamp on, half, 50% of it, and then dense forest. There's still a park there, Brudno Park, on the northeast of Warsaw. You go through there, you go right by it, close enough, as you go to Białystok towards Belarus. But anyway, I want to ask you, you've been in Poland for quite a while. You've been in Warsaw quite a while. Just maybe you want to throw out a diatribe about the difference between then and now, and whether Warsaw deserves this sobriquet of Paris of the East.
Well, probably yes. It depends what you regard as Paris, or what you see Paris as being symbolic of. Obviously, the French would say culture, and they're probably right. I mean, they do regard the defence of European culture, particularly French culture, is very important.
Yeah.
It's obviously a beautiful city. The French spend a lot of money on keeping Paris beautiful.
Yeah.
They have the boulevards by Haussmann, of course, designed to be straight so you could fire cannon down them in case anybody had the idea of having a new revolution. And I suppose really Warsaw became talked about as the Paris of the East before the war, when you had the culture, you had the sort of cafe society, you had the theatres, and architecturally there were some similarities, although on a much smaller scale. And one is reminded, of course, in later life, of the joke about the Parisian man from Paris flying to Moscow, and the man from Moscow flying to Paris, and both planes stopped in Warsaw, and both thought they'd arrived.
Yeah, that's an old joke.
An old joke,
it does
put
it in. It's a good joke. I have to remember that.
Yeah.
I'll use it in something I'm writing now.
So yes, and of course, in our time here, there's been massive building and rebuilding in Warsaw of all sorts of things, and the shops and the cafes and the restaurants. Just been a great renaissance. So the physical landscape.
Cafe life exists in the summer here.
Yes.
The winter, it's too bitter. Paris, you still have a bit of it.
You have a bit, yeah.
Year-round, because they have this great, glass.
Yeah, then the climate is a little milder.
Yeah. Or, and you'll see that.
But certainly
I
has
think
been
the
a great...
cultural. This is a city of theaters.
Yes.
There's a lot of theaters, and people
Opera.
go. They sell out. This is a theater-going country.
I was trying to get tickets for the opera the other day. I obviously left it too late because there seem to be fewer productions during the course of the season, which runs from September to June.
Yeah.
But they seem to sell out much more quickly than they used to, which is probably indicative. A, I think they have slightly fewer, but B, of a rising prosperity and a rising appreciation of the artistic life here.
Yeah. So there's a lot of culture going on. Was it Henry? Somebody said when I think of culture, I reach for my revolver. But
who said that?
I think it may have been Goebbels. So it's not a great guy.
It's a sort of thing you might have expected someone like Kingsley Amis to have said. Actually, it's a sort of thing he probably wishes he had said.
Henry Miller said it, but he quoted it. I believe he said it was Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, who said it.
But certainly, we're not here to talk about politics, but certainly having achieved this, you can see why.
I don't want to talk about politics.
No, I'm not going
I want to talk about why Warsaw, in all of its facets, should be the Paris of the East. For me, I don't like to call it the Paris of the East.
No,
why shouldn't Paris be the Warsaw of the West?
The West, well, exactly.
I mean, in a sense.
But this habit of calling things other things.
Why should you?
You should. Yeah. It bespeaks slightly of a sort of lack of confidence.
There's that.
We are Warsaw, but you say, oh, no, we're the Paris of the East. Oh, yeah, you don't need to do that.
Or the Amsterdam of the North. I mean, the Venice of the North is Amsterdam, right? Or several places.
Well, Stockholm could even be the Venice of the North.
Another one, yeah.
Another one, but they don't. Yeah. But they
Why
don't,
not Copenhagen?
Well, yes, well, exactly. Because in Stockholm,
or Oslo.
But in Stockholm, there are a lot of canals and islands and things.
Yeah.
And I've even seen, good to believe, Wrocław described as the...
Oh, I have too. That's the one I've seen.
Which is a bit more desperate because...
There are 100. There
are like fewer canals.
No, but there are like 100 and something bridges in Wrocław. Both footbridges and... I mean, we did a series of programs about... episodes about these bridges. That was fascinating.
I think you see articles about it in the Paris of the East because somebody coined the phrase once, and it's lazy journalism to a large extent.
I think so. It's like I'm not going to. If I just use this shorthand, then I don't have to explain to you
exactly
really what it's like.
Yeah,
and that really backs up my thesis, but it doesn't to me. I find it unconvincing. And as you say, if it's from an Auslander, if it's from a foreigner, it seems rather. What do you call it? Condescending.
Well, of course.
And if it's from a Pole, it seems rather
and in many ways,
lacking in confidence.
In many ways, it's not the Paris of the East. You can travel late at night, as I have done, on the metro here. I mean, I think the weekend, the last metro leaves the centre at 2:30 in the morning. I've taken
Great film by Truffaut.
Yeah, I've taken it, and you see people, including women alone, moving around completely safely, completely unmolested. I can't imagine taking the last underground or the last metro in Paris on a Friday or Saturday evening and feeling particularly comfortable about it. So in that way, it's not the Paris. It's much better than Paris in some ways, or better than London in that particular sense. And I suppose for these articles written in English, of course, because for many American journalists, Paris is the acme of European civilization. So if they're writing for other Americans, to make them understand, it's shorthand again. It's like Paris, but in the East, sort of idea. And I think that's another reason why they would use that. As another city, which is kind of where lots of cafes and things, and you can wander around. But then you could also say that of Prague, probably, or other cities in this part of the world.
Yeah, I think Prague is more... I think Warsaw is more interesting. I always thought Prague was rather like going to Disneyland.
And Warsaw actually is more interesting than Paris. There's a lot more greenery in Warsaw than in Paris. In Paris, you have all these long streets. I mean, in the central, inside the Rue Périphérique in Paris, there's virtually no greenery anywhere.
What is the... You used an interesting phrase there. What was that?
Rue Périphérique.
Wow.
It's the main road that goes round Paris.
There you go. For the people who don't know what is it?
A rue périphérique.
Gosh, there you go with that expensive education.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you look at that, and it's actually, I imagine, that's why the French are so mad. If you live in a city with no greenery, which essentially Paris is, they have not like London where you have all these parks and squares and garden squares and things. I mean, Paris is really bereft of green space.
I've got to stop you right there. What a great thought, because that's the end of 25 minutes. It went just like that.
Warsaw is much greener than people imagine. There's a lot of greenery in Warsaw.
And I know, because during COVID, I went to every park because you couldn't go anywhere. Yeah. We kept going with the show, so I know the parks intimately, and they're interesting. There's a lot of history in those parks. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll be back with Nicholas Richardson. I'll tell you about my wonderful books that everybody must buy, and how you can get a free copy by writing in on Facebook. And when we come back, we're going to talk about something a little more serious, although the subject of Warsaw, of course, has its serious moments and serious history. We'll talk about, I think, a little bit about the Middle East, as that is something you've been following for TVP and reporting on for the last year and a half. So stay with us. And by the way, buy all of these products that you see. It keeps us on the air. Buy 2 or 3 and send me one. Send Nicholas one, too. See you after the break. Okay, welcome back, everyone. You can see these 2 red books in front of me. Right. These are books that I wrote. Some of you may remember that from watching previous shows. One is Rome. It's the story of a cowboy capitalist based on intensive research in various countries over a period of years. And I think you'll find, and there's an extensive section about Poland toward the end of the book. It follows this character from the Vietnam War, Bobby J. Mann, through his establishment of various kinds of entrepreneurial ventures throughout the world. And then, of course, he makes a fortune finally in Poland. And I won't tell you what happens then. And a sequel is coming very soon, perhaps before Christmas, if not just shortly in the new year. And the other is this book here, which is Are You Talking to Me? This is a collection of interviews, folks. Interviews with a number of people that you will have heard of, including Mike Tyson, Rutger Hauer, the Dutch actor, Bruce Willis, Jan Kaczmarek, the Polish Oscar winner, Gene Gutowski, another Oscar winner for The Pianist as a producer, Andrei Konchalovsky, another Oscar winner as a director, Ben Collins, The Stig, Vladimir Klitschko, another boxer, and John Lydon of the Sex Pistols, amongst others. I think you'll find it an interesting read. I enjoyed writing all these stories, which were published in various journals and newspapers around Europe and America. So that's Are You Talking to Me and Rome. Now, the first, if you go to There's a Will on Facebook and you write in that you would like the first 5 people who write in about each book and would like a copy of the book, if you simply subscribe then on YouTube to this show, you'll get a free copy. I'll send it to you. You'll give me your address on Facebook, and you'll subscribe on YouTube to the show, and you will get a free copy, autographed, to you of each book. That's Are You Talking to Me? And or Rome, the story of a cowboy capitalist, which is a rollicking adventure story. Yeah. Did you enjoy reading?
I enjoyed reading.
Yeah, I paid you to say that, no?
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't. You would give me...
You couldn't pay me enough.
You would ignore me.
Perjure myself
if you
by
didn't
saying
like
your books were good if I didn't like it.
If you didn't like it, you would... Well,
Exactly.
I'd say, all of the stories in here were paid for. So try at home, try writing a story that someone pays you for. It's not easy.
No.
And or calls you and says, would you do this interview for us? There's also this book, I have a limited amount of these books. That's Wish You Were Here, and in Polish, Szkoda, że ciebie tu nie ma, which is the translation in Polish. It's a book which is in English and in Polish. Again, published travel stories. Now, I have a very few copies of this book left. It's a collector's item. So if you're interested in this book, also write in, and we'll see what we can do for you on that. But the others, 5 copies of each to be given away to the first 5 who follow the rules.
Follow the rules, yes.
If you're not sure what the rules are, just write us on There's a Will on Facebook and ask, hey, Will, I'm here. What are the rules? I'll tell you. Okay?
Okay.
That's enough of that. Okay, we'll put these down now.
Because they're going to fall and make a noise.
And we'll go, I know, they're not standing up too well.
No, they're not.
All right. But I hope they stand up to the test of time.
Ho, ho, ho. The old ones are the best.
Yep. That's what you hope.
You do.
When you write a book, right?
You hope that people will still be reading it in 100 years' time, yes.
I think either one of those books would be a good read in 100 years' time.
No,
or tomorrow.
Or tomorrow.
If you want to buy them on Amazon.
If people just read full stop.
Yeah, you can just look up my name and the
you'll
title
find
of the book.
I got mine from Amazon.
And you can buy it on Amazon.
I bought my Rome on Amazon.
Did you buy it? Yeah.
I bought Rome on Amazon.
Yeah.
I did.
It's going well in Africa. I'm joking.
I can imagine it's going particularly well in
I don't
Africa.
know where it's going well, but occasionally, I mean, you know, it trickles in and people are buying, and I notice because something goes ping in the bank account. Yeah. So that's how we do that. All right. Now, you were working for Middle East Observer.
Yes.
You were doing the Middle East
still do
Observer
it.
for television. Yes,
It's a program we make here for TVP World, which is the English language service of Telewizja Polska, the state television broadcasting company in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
Once a week, it's a short program. We focus
short?
on. I think it's about 50. It's only 15 minutes. Goes
15
out on a
minutes.
Monday night, and we just focus on a different aspect of the Middle East. We've been doing it for. The last one I recorded was for episode 79. So I've been doing it for about a year and a half. And we look at different countries in the Middle East and interview people, experts, people who happen to be on the ground, clergymen, all sorts of people, really wide variety, in fact.
And you were doing NATO dispatches.
And before that, I was doing NATO dispatches, and then TVP World decided they'd like a different program from NATO dispatches. So I was dispatched from that and asked to do Middle East Observer. And of course, it's been it has been an interesting time to be covering the Middle East.
Well,
because there's a lot going on, as I say.
Interesting.
As I say at the end of every program, it's a bit of a kaleidoscope because there's so many people involved now.
I mean, you're right there. You've been reporting on on the build-up with
we
NATO
had a
and
very
Ukraine,
good program.
and now you're doing that.
We had a very good program 2 weeks ago, which was in the immediate aftermath of the Hamas attack by a young chap who had actually served in the Israeli army before, but not at present, and was saying that how everybody in Israel is just appalled by this. And he was making the point that Arab Israelis are equally appalled by what went on, and that there was this great unity. He became very emotional, and there was this great unity of feeling in Israel that something had to be done.
Yeah, well, the people that may not realize that there are 7 million Jewish Israelis and 2 million Arab Israelis who have exactly the same rights and citizenship.
It's very, for you and I who are capable of rational thought, it's become a very difficult situation because there are two completely unrelated or only obliquely related issues. One is this horrific attack by Hamas. So it doesn't matter what your political views are, to go in deliberately targeting civilians, including women and children. And there have been some horrific reports of what's happened to children, particularly babies, is one thing, and that's just completely unacceptable at any level. And then there's the wider issue of how you deal with the whole question of Palestine, which has been an issue since 1948, when the first war, which essentially established the modern state of Israel, where it had been, I say the first war, where it had actually been defending itself as a place for Jews to go and live in some degree of safety.
We had 3 wars, right?
We had 3 wars. There was the Six-Day War, and then Yom Kippur in 1973. And ironically...
the Six-Day War was 67.
67. And ironically, the Hamas attack was one day out from the 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur. And there are some parallels, because Yom Kippur was another war where it was a national holiday, and the Arab forces which attacked, the combined Arab forces which attacked Israel, assumed that because they're on holiday it would be easy. And of course, ironically, because they're on holiday, people were listening to their radios at home, so they were able to mobilize and fight and resist. But it was the 73 war, of course, which led to the Arabs feeling for the first time, aha, we can now use oil to our advantage. Do you
and
remember?
The great oil crisis.
And the great oil crisis,
70s.
when they, at one point, I was at school, and I remember there was a question in the UK of introducing petrol rationing. They even went so far as issuing coupons to people.
What's petrol?
Petrol. It's what you put in your car.
I thought it was a bird.
No, that's a petrel.
Oh, okay.
Not petrol.
Gosh.
Not petroleum spirit.
Gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Separated by common language.
It's separated by common language.
There we are.
Exactly.
Incredible.
I think George Bernard Shaw said separated by a common ideal, but your thought
Who's
is
that?
George Bernard Shaw is a playwright. He was a playwright in the beginning of the 20th century.
Is he the guy who said, I've seen the future and it works, when he visited Moscow?
Or was that the Webbs?
That was Shaw.
Well, that was Shaw, was it? Yeah. Well, the Webb said something similar.
Yeah.
You know,
he was great friends with T.E. Lawrence.
Yes, all these leftists have
and
these
many
sort
other
of
people.
ideas. Yeah, exactly.
Fabian Society originator, wasn't he?
Yeah.
With the Webbs. Yeah, Beatrice and Sidney.
So we have this. We have this.
LSE founders.
Yeah. So we have this.
I went to the LSE.
You did,
by
yes.
the way. Mm.
So there is this now war between Israel and Hamas, essentially, with the folk of Gaza caught in the middle. I say folk of Gaza, I mean people forget that, or choose to forget, that in 2005, Israel withdrew completely from Gaza. They closed all the Israeli settlements in Gaza, or Jewish settlements, and left it to the Palestinians, who immediately, or very shortly afterwards, voted for Hamas, this radical terrorist organization, instead of Fatwa, and Fatwa is the Palestinian organization which actually runs the West Bank. And you know, they were left. I know it's very difficult geographically. You can't say they were left completely alone, but they were left alone to organise their own affairs. And since then, the Gaza Strip has become a sort of periodic source of problems because people think that lobbing rockets over into Israel is a good idea to say.
What makes the Palestinians different than all other Arabs, so that other Arabs don't like to let them into their country? What is it historically, and what's a contemporary
I don't know
reason?
what is different about it. I think, unfortunately, it
leaves Israel to deal with them, and they're not even, and they're Muslim.
It leaves Israel because we've
why
discussed.
Is that?
I don't know. This whole concept of Muslims helping each other is bizarre, because they don't. I mean, we've seen all these refugees into Europe. They've walked past Muslim countries where they're not let in. The Gulf states, for example, Saudi Arabia,
well, ditto African
will not let. Other Muslim refugees in.
Yeah.
So Israel is left to sort out the problem. But at the same time, he's been accused of having caused the problem. I mean, there are some ridiculous things. For example, a lot of Western aid goes into Gaza to build things like water.
Yeah, why isn't it a beautiful place with all that money?
But then Hamas dig up the pipes to use them to make rockets.
Oh,
that's why.
what happens, right?
Because Hamas is a terrorist organisation. It's not interested in looking after...
And they use the cement to make their tunnels.
It's not interested in looking after the people it purportedly represents.
What are they interested in? What is Hamas's objective?
The destruction of Jewish people. It's not even about a free Palestine. It's about the destruction of Jewish people. Well, let me get this straight.
So the Hamas wants to destroy
the state
all
of Israel.
The Jewish people?
Yeah, the state
or
of
just
Israel. Well, Israel, because
do they want all Jews to die?
I think they want. I haven't read their website, but they want essentially all their public pronouncement. They want all Jews to die. They want to remove Jews from Palestine.
I don't know about you.
That means killing them all.
I don't know about you. I don't know.
And that is terrorism. I don't
real,
believe the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or Fatah, who run the West Bank, actually have taken that view. They would like liberation of Palestine, but I don't think they're advocating genocide in the way that Hamas does.
Well, good Lord. That reminds me of a fellow, you may have heard of him, by the name of, you're a student of history, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. By the name of Adolf Hitler.
Well, exactly.
Who had a similar vision with a fellow called
Heinrich
Himmler.
But of course, in the warped modern mind where nobody reads anything, of course, it's the Israelis who are compared to the Nazis.
I know.
It's absolutely and utterly bizarre.
Because here's the way it works. This is the communist propaganda, as far as I can see, works like this, which they've embedded in the universities and in various divisive race groups about race or nationality. They plant the seed that anything conservative is fascist by definition. So therefore, they hate Israel when they have a conservative government, whether it's a...
They hate Israel full stop.
Well, but when it has a conservative government, then they have even...
Yeah.
It's not just the Muslims who hate them, but it's people who don't like conservatives. Because conservatives, of course, are in league with Lucifer himself, whereas only the left will bring this great nirvana of in the future.
Which, of course, is complete nonsense.
Well, of course. And because capitalism is by its nature libertarian and entrepreneurial, and that's what fuels all success. Generation of trade,
and capitalism,
money,
and actually capitalism,
ideas.
when you think about it, or the political philosophies that support capitalism, is about improving the life of the people who live here today.
Gosh, Adam Smith.
Yes. Now, the left, all left doctrines are about making the people who live here today change their lives to fit in to some utopian idea, and that is the difference. And you see that starting from the French Revolution onwards.
Remember that book, Air One?
Yeah.
Nowhere. Air
exactly,
One.
and this is the point. This is the difference between left and right, essentially.
Yeah. It gives me no pleasure to say it.
The left don't see that.
The left are idiots.
I mean, I think, I don't know about you, I was absolutely horrified to see on news reports people gathered outside the Sydney Opera House chanting in broad, without any shame, gas the Jews.
Gas the Jews.
In 2023,
That's okay.
in a democratic country, this is considered something okay.
Because Israel, the next thing they'll be saying is Israel's illiberal for defending itself.
So, so Israel...
I've got friends who are posting on Facebook, I stand with Palestine. But that's not the point. Do you stand with Hamas because they run it?
They don't have the imagination to be able to draw distinction.
And there is no PLO
and I'm sure
anymore.
If we were able
What's wrong with people?
If we were able to go into Gaza and speak to the average Palestinian family, I'm sure they would draw a distinction between the well-being of the Palestinian folk and what Hamas is doing. Well, no, because it's doing setting that they are
Hamas is using them to carry out these.
Hamas doesn't care.
Death feud.
Hamas doesn't care. I mean, there's that. I don't know if you saw that cartoon. That cartoon that appeared on social media of an Israeli soldier with women and children behind him against a Hamas gunman with women and children in front of him, and that's the difference.
Israel, that's the cartoon.
Yes, Israel trying to.
That's like an old-time Punch cartoon.
Yeah, I think it probably is. It's probably been doing the rounds for years. But I mean, that really sums it up. Yeah. And Israel gets.
I mean, no, that's like a 19th century.
So Israel caused the problem, but Israel has to sort out the problem. But if in sorting out the problem, Israel actually wants to defend its own women and children and its own people, that's wrong. I mean, the whole thing is so twisted of this hatred of this anti-Semitism, essentially, which is what it is. And everybody thought, and I'm sure that this was something we had confined to the history books, but clearly not. And
well,
it's
no, all
worse.
of these skeletons are coming out of the closet. I mean, we saw it in Central Europe with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, calling them Nazis. This is this reverse thing. I attack you, then you're the Nazi. And it's like Germans and other people attacking the Polish as having, I mean, it's like Jonathan Swift, the reply should be, it's like, because they don't like conservative Poland, and the rise of Poland is really what it's about. The fact that Poland's becoming strong and really a player on the world stage soon, if things keep going this way. There's a lot of people that don't like that.
Because they resent the fact that Poland has got to this situation without pandering to all the sort of liberal nonsense and wokeism and identity politics and all the other stuff, which is actually destroying the West.
Well, they forget also that Poland was a cradle of the present idea of republics in the 18th century.
Exactly.
Along with the French philosophers
but this is
and the British philosophers.
These people don't know.
The American philosophers.
They seem to take great pride in displaying their complete and utter ignorance of the world around them and their ignorance of history. But why
don't people just pick up a book? It's fun.
Because it's difficult to pick up. It's much easier for them
though.
to go and walk down the street and chant and with a simplistic slogans. I mean, it is absolutely bizarre. But it's as Douglas Murray made the point on one of his being interviewed by a journalist. He said, how is it possible that people who use the wrong pronoun are accused of terrorism, and yet the people who accuse them of terrorism for that, when they see evidence of women and children murdered, of babies having their heads chopped off, have nothing to say? They are silent. Why is it that these people who worry about a bit of language being terrorism are so silent in the face of real terror?
Well, because they're in the tribes and they're soft in the head, because if you go against the dogma of the tribe, then you are outcast and canceled by your own group. They don't cancel just conservatives or people who are open-minded people who disagree
all
with
revolutions consume their own children, of course. I mean,
I think you could look at the French. That's a good point. You look at the French Revolution and the Jacobins and how that went through its stages till Napoleon became the dictator. Is that the next stage?
Look how somebody like Germaine Greer, a woman who's written for feminist rights for years and years and years, is suddenly being attacked by this...
Germaine Greer?
Yeah, by this mythical... by this mythical trans lobby.
Germaine Greer wrote, was it The Female Eunuch?
The Female Eunuch,
yeah. The classic 70s book, and she was a professor. She wrote about, women must, women's rights and how they go about it.
She has been attacked.
I know, because she repudiated a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because she said, no, well, who's going to nurture children and bring up the family and be the rock of a family? It's got to be the woman, because the man's got to go out and work and hunt. The woman may do it too, but when it becomes imbalanced, because a man can't do that, man can't produce the child which propagates the race.
But I think
I'm going to stand by that, by the way. I know it's controversial.
Yeah, well, you should do. But
you know what?
Yes.
Type.
This is this whole cancellation culture.
Like
I'm not prepared to argue with you.
I'm happy to argue that.
I'm not prepared to argue with you, so I'm actually going to not allow you to speak at all.
The shouting down thing.
The shouting down, this cancellation. Oh, we've got students, we've got to be protected from somebody who might disagree with us.
Let's come back to the Middle East, just because we're running out of time. But let's come back.
We're running out of time. We need a longer program.
I know. Well, maybe we can do that in the future, but we shall see. But or maybe we'll just do an intense 30 minutes at some point as a different program where we talk about different issues. An issue of the week or something,
Anyway,
what's
continue, Middle East.
Yeah. Why is it that no one wants to, or too many people on the left don't want to, and not just on the right too, don't want to admit that the United States has, as the leader of the free world, has an obligation to make things right, to put down Iran, keep them down. I mean, I was thinking, I'm much less worried than I was now that I'm watching Israelis have been very restrained.
And this is an interesting, but what is restraint? What is a proportionate response? I mean, there was a very, but it's relevant, there was a very interesting piece by Danny Finkelstein in the Times. And he said, he was talking about what had remained of his family when they were on the train on their way back from Belsen, after the war. There was most of his relatives, I mean, it was before he was born, but most of his grandparents' generation of his family were killed. Yeah. And he said, and I think it was either an aunt or a grandmother and her sister who'd survived, the only man's family on the train, through a ruined Berlin. And he said, what is the proportionate response? No amount of ruination of Berlin could ever, and the destruction of Germany, could have been a proportionate response to what they suffered and what the family suffered in the concentration camps.
Or destroying Berlin doesn't rebuild Warsaw.
Yes, exactly.
But who destroyed Berlin?
But then he said, but on the other hand, they wouldn't have been liberated from the camps at all had it not been had it not been for the military effort against Germany. So he said, deciding what is a proportionate response is extremely difficult.
Look, the other thing is it didn't happen to you.
No.
And unless something like that has happened to you, but imagine some marauders, it's like a John Wayne movie in a sense. You remember The Searchers?
The Searchers.
The great classic where they come and murder his family and kidnap one of the daughters. It's a microcosm of what happened. And then John Wayne's figure goes on alone Goes on a
ultimately.
vengeance to get those Indians because he's just that sort of guy. And there were people like that in the West. It's not just mythical. There were people who did things like that. So revenge plus redemption.
And for the younger viewers, if we have any, the similar
Revenge
thing,
plus redemption.
similar view in similar story in one of the Star Wars films when Anakin goes to rescue his mother and
Well, I mean, it's
revenge.
classic. It's a classic theme. It's the hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell wrote. But the West, can the West allow Hamas to exist, and should it?
Well, ultimately, probably not, because you have to decide at what point you remove a threat before it becomes a much bigger threat.
Well, doesn't that go back to Iran, and you just stomp all over Iran and say, and you make it possible for the mullahs to be out and for the people to rise?
Well, that's a much bigger issue. Well, that requires a lot more.
You can certainly stamp them down and make it more difficult. I don't know why we've been making it easier on Iran as the American government.
I don't know either.
If they get the atomic bomb, how bad would this situation be?
Very bad, because
the Israelis have it too.
Because but the Israelis haven't used it.
No, they're not going to.
If Iran no, they're not going to. But if Iran gets it, Saudi will get it.
They haven't done it even in response.
The more people who have it, the more danger is of one day of an accident. Because I'm convinced most of these things start rather than deliberate.
Of course,
it'll be an accident. Somebody will press the wrong button
Of course, you're right.
Somewhere once.
That's what everyone who looks at this.
Or there'll be a breakdown
fears.
in communications, and somebody will, press the wrong button because they misunderstood an order or lack of order or something happened.
We got to go.
Yeah, we've got to go. But no, we have to. Israel has to be allowed to deal with Hamas.
And the United States has to take its leadership position. I'm glad that the president said that.
Yes, and the reason is, and it may
finally
it may upset Americans, but the reason is that just happens to be the country America is, and that's where America is in the world.
We got to get ourselves together.
Nobody else will do it. Nobody else can do it.
The West has to get itself together.
I would rather the Americans did it than, for example, the Chinese or the Russians did it, because it would be infinitely worse. And all these people are protesting about how bad it is.
And young people,
I can tell you,
young people, stop listening to communist propaganda in your universities. Please stop. Read a book, read some history, and think for yourself.
That's
stop listening to those professors. Think for yourselves. Give your brain a chance. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I want to thank Nicholas Richardson.
Always a pleasure.
A Middle East observer, formerly NATO Dispatch's reporter, also working with Poland Daily, English language service in Warsaw. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time on There's a Will.